Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Bullony Basketball. It's officially the end of the season. It was a weird playoffs. I mean, I don't think a lot of people expected it to go how it did. But ultimately, we got two teams in the finals that had not been there in a while. And we got the Oklahoma City Thunder coming out on top over the Indiana Pacers in 7 games. This is going to be like the last real episode that I'm like talking, I guess, in the season. So, I kind of just want to recap the series, want to talk about both teams for getting that far, and then, do a little fun, final segment that I usually do every season. So, won't be that long of an episode really, but just kind of want to touch on a few things. So, I guess starting off just by recapping the finals, I think in recent years, people had a problem for sure with the finals like not really being too long. It didn't feel too competitive. Last year, Boston and Dallas was not a very competitive series. The year before that, Denver and Miami, it wasn't a very competitive series. And I mean, it was still good to see those teams win because like they hadn't won in a while or ever. But ultimately, this year you got like a more competitive series. I think that people thought the Thunder coming in were probably going to steamroll them, and they didn't. In fact, the Pacers got the first game, and they were up after game 1. They were up after game 3 in the series, too. But then, the Thunder won 3 of the last 4, and then that was that. I do think that it just felt kind of weird because it felt like the Thunder didn't play a great series. I feel like they could have even played a little bit better. But having said that, like the Pacers, I feel like they even left some on the table in certain moments, like in Game 4 especially. I think the Thunder, obviously, like Game 1, Game 3, you could argue they could have won those. They really could have won the first 4 games. They could have won this series in 5 games, too, if they still lost Game 3. So, with that being said, it was still like a really weird series, but, Game 6, Pacers down 3-2. They respond. They forced it to a Game 7. And I think people thought, okay, Halliburton, he got to rest. He didn't have to play that much. So that's going to be a good thing. And then it seemed like it because of the way he started the next game. And it just wasn't, very good. So, and we all know, how that happened. I don't really want to get too much into it because I know it's probably a sensitive topic for Pacer fans. But ultimately, that, you could argue, decided the last game. I mean, they were winning at that point when that happened. So, it was still a really good finals. If I had to rank it based on the last decade's worth, I think the 2016 finals gets a lot of talk just because it had a great Game 7. In my opinion, it was not some super heroic series. It was just that the last game was super close. The makings of the whole series in 2016 wasn't anything spectacular up until that last game, which was really close, and it was really competitive, and it was insane. 2017, 2018 weren't really that competitive. 2019 was kind of fun. 2020 didn't really feel competitive. I know it went 6 games. I know, whatever, the bubble. There was a lot of close games in there, but it just never really felt right. I think the Bucks-Suns was a really good series. Warriors-Celtics, I know that one went 6, but it felt kind of off to me. It felt like an okay series, but in comparison to some of these other ones, it didn't really feel quite as good. Obviously I was happy the Nuggets won, but that series, unbiased from a viewer's perspective, maybe wasn't super entertaining, you could say, just because the Nuggets won with ease. And that's kind of what happened last year with the Celtics. So in recent years, it definitely is good. I think it's the best one since the 2021, but I don't even think it's better than that one, even though this series went 7 and that one went 6. I think the real thing that brings it down is just the last 2 games. I think if the last 2 games were really close, if it went to 7 games, no one really got hurt, because obviously Halliburton did, then this would have been, you could argue, maybe the best series of the last 10 years. Obviously, the Cavs-Warriors is going to have those iconic moments with the Kyrie shot and then the LeBron block, which were huge. But I think just as a series as a whole, like you could argue it was still better than that one. But it definitely, I think, would be if those other games were close and they just weren't. So it was still a crazy final series. I mean, I guess I'm glad that it was a longer series. I do think they need to do something about like the games, like the time between games though. Because it did feel like very long. And I don't know if part of that is just because like the league maybe didn't put enough effort into trying to be like, hey, we're in the finals mode and like talking about each game by game and like giving it more weight. Just kind of seemed like it was there and it was happening. Maybe that's part of it. But I don't know. It did feel like it was very long. It felt like the end of the season was very long. And that's kind of weird. And it felt like the Game 7 really didn't feel like a Game 7 either. Just because of the way, like, after the game, the Thunder win. They don't even, like, I know they're a younger team, but, like, they're not even, like, celebrating much in the locker room or anything. They didn't really pop confetti, like, in the arena, like, after they won or anything like that. So it was kind of a weird feeling. So, but in the end, I mean, they're still the champions. And we're gonna have to see what happens for them next year. Now, I guess we can hop though into the Thunder analysis, and then I'll give a Pacers analysis, and then talk about the last segment of the show. So for the Thunder, I mean, this is a team who, I mean, they've said a lot, like they're the second youngest team to win a championship, only behind the 1977 Portland Trailblazers with Bill Walton and Maurice Lucas and Dave Torzik and Lionel Hollins and pretty much everybody else, Bob Gross, shout out. But anyways, the Thunder, they kind of, like, I don't think it was too surprising for them to win the championship. Before the playoffs started, everyone had three teams penciled, and it was the Cavs, the Thunder, and the Celtics. The Celtics just won the championship last year, so obviously they're going to be in the mix. The Thunder were the best record in the West, and the Cavs were the best record in the East. And they were the 360-win teams this season. Maybe you could throw the Nuggets in there because they did win 2 years ago, and they have the best player in the league. But I think aside from that, nobody else really had a chance. And then, I think once, the Cavs went out and once the Celtics went out, you're in the Final Four. The Thunder instantly became, the favorites. I don't know. I mean, things could have been different if the Cavs got there. It could have been different if the Celtics got there. But I think that the Pacers were worthy of getting there too. I don't want to talk too much about the Pacers yet, but I do think that they were worthy of getting there. I think they deserved to get there. As for the Thunder, though, now they're going to go into next year, and they have to figure out, like, because they have Shea, they have Jalen Williams, they have Chet. Those guys they're going to keep. They got Alex Caruso on contract and stuff. But they're going to have to figure out, like, what to do with Isaiah Joe. What are they going to do with Aaron Wiggins? After a while, they're going to have to come to a decision probably with, like, Case and Wallace and stuff. And because they can't keep, like, all these guys forever. That's just not the way that the league works now, like, with the CBA. So they're going to have to decide who they want to keep. Like, that's what you're going to see really this offseason, I think, with the Celtics. So, right now they're a young team. They have a window. They could maybe win a championship again next year. They're probably going to be the favorites to go win it next year. But, of course, the one thing that was in their favor this year is the health. Like, I think the only big injury they had, well, they had two injuries, but the big injury was Chet. He was hurt throughout a portion of the season. And then, Alex Caruso kind of missed a little bit of time. But aside from that, pretty much everybody else was healthy for a majority of the season. They weren't really out of the lineup or anything like that too crazy. So that's kind of the one thing, like, maybe because they're a younger team that happens. Or maybe it's because of the wear and tear of having a deep playoff run. Multiple years, a lot of these guys were together and they did not make the playoffs at all. Last year, they get to the second round. They're playing in, like, mid-May. This year, they're playing to a Game 7 in the NBA Finals. And they played 2 Game 7s to get there because they played one against Denver, too. So I don't know if that's going to have a wear and tear on them at all. I think that, what did they say? They won 84. I think they won 84 games in total in the season if you count the playoffs. And they ended up losing 7 playoff games, and they lost 14 regular season games. So they lost 21 games. So in total, I mean, they played 105 games this season, if you count the playoffs. That's a lot of games, especially in like a matter of, what would it be, like 8 months or so? Like, that's almost like every other every other day you're playing a game. So we'll see how that happens. I think that maybe had a part in Tatum, and now he's probably going to miss part of next season. So if that does come back to bite him in the butt, then that's the case. But I think right now, they're all healthy. They're a younger team than the Celtics even. So I think it's probably less likely that does happen. But I mean, we've seen a crazy number of things. Like, they're talking about, like, not just Tatum, but it's Dame, and it's Halliburton, and it's Kyrie. I know it's a different thing, but still, like, it just happens. So that's the one thing I think the Thunder need to, like, worry about, is, like, those key bench guys, like Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, and then I guess just staying healthy, really. So, so the Thunder, I think that they're still sitting good. As for the Pacers, there's probably a little bit more to look at here. Obviously, like, I think Halliburton proved that he's, not overrated, because I think he was listed as overrated because of what people thought he was. And I think he's better than actually, like, what people thought he was. But I think lately he's maybe been getting too hyped up, I guess, because in my opinion, you could argue he's a top 10 player in the league maybe, but I don't think he's on the level of a Shea or a Jokic or a Giannis or Tatum, Donovan Mitchell, Luka. Like, there's other players that I don't think he's really on their level. And that's okay. Like, you can still win a championship being that player. You just need to have the right system. And I think that this is a good team, like, well-rounded. I mean, Siakam had a pretty good playoffs. I think Nembhard, once again, had a good playoffs. Ben Mathurin had moments. Obi Toppin. Nesmith, where would they be without his game against the Knicks? Like, a lot of people really stepped up. Pretty much the only guy who did not step up, I think, was Miles Turner. And that's kind of unfortunate because he's been with the Pacers the longest. How is the guy that's been with the Pacers for a decade now, like, the guy that crumbles in the biggest stage? And with him really being their only big free agent, it kind of puts a worry on things because you don't know what direction they're going to go. Like, they might just literally say, we've seen what we can do at the top, and Miles Turner was not anywhere to be found. He was MIA Turner. So if that's the case, you might need to move on from him. I know that they were one win away from the championship, but it's not like he had one bad game. Like, this is a guy who routinely in the finals was getting 6 rebounds or less as a 7-footer. I said in the last series against Mitchell Robinson, he was getting out-rebounded. Even with help trying to rebound with him, he was getting out-rebounded. When they played the Cavs, the only thing that kept the Cavs potentially winning that series was a second chance opportunity because of, Allen and then the games that Mobley played. So you want a guy who can rebound, and you want a guy who can, I guess be like a lob threat. You want a guy who can maybe play defense, and he does some of those things, but he also was so poor offensively, taking bad shots and making bad decisions, that I think it really sparked a lot of OKC points. And in a series where almost every game except maybe 2 were close, like, you can't allow that, especially when 2 of those games, or really 3 of those games, you lost. So I don't know. I think that things could have been different. I still think for the Pacers, I mean, that game 4 is probably the real thing that they're looking at, because I said before that when they got the 1-1 split in OKC, I'm like, that's great. They needed to get 1 there, but they need to win both at home. And they won game 3, and I'm like, they still need to win game 4 at home. And they didn't. And then because they didn't, it was pretty much really over from there. I mean, OKC had control. It was just home court advantage after that. They won game 5, Pacers won game 6, OKC won game 7. And again, I know the Halliburton injury came, but still, like, that's something you just can't let slip. They should know that because of how many times teams came back against at their expense. So that's just kind of the big thing right there. And especially if they won that game 4, maybe they win the series in 6, so they're champions by game 6, and then Halliburton's healthy for next season. There's a lot to think about. I still think they'll be a playoff team next year, but without Halliburton, I really don't see them in the Eastern Conference hunt. I don't think they're better than the Cavs. I don't think they're better than the Knicks. I don't think they're better than the Celtics even without Tatum. There's other teams on the rise too, like the Magic, the Pistons, so you can't just ignore them. The Bucks still have Giannis at this time being, so there's other teams in the East that are not going to be pushovers either. So, yeah. So, we'll see what happens with the Pacers. I think that they're going to have an interesting offseason. We'll see if they end up getting like a rental player. I will say, though, for them, I think there were a couple players, like especially TJ McConnell. Like, TJ McConnell played extremely well. You kind of feel bad for him because there were a lot of times in this series where they were just depending on him. And that's even when Halliburton was playing some of the games. So I think he proved that he's like one of the best players to come off your bench in the league, and possibly one day can still win a championship. Ben Mathurin, I think, was up and down, but so were his minutes. I will say, though, they won 3 games in this series, and they don't win game 3 if it's not for him. Like, he was literally the MVP of game 3. And down the stretch of game 7, he was their best player in the fourth quarter. He's the only real player that gave him a chance at the end. So, yes, like, you might live with his mistakes, especially there was a couple at the end of game 4 when the game was already decided. Maybe they could have came back in the game and he missed some free throws, but I still think that he played relatively well as a third-year player who's hardly getting any minutes. I think Siakam played well. I think Nembhard has moments, but, Nesmith kind of let down. Toppin was a little bit up and down, and then especially Miles Turner. And I really think Rick Carlisle, this is a guy who's won a championship, and I feel like he made some, kind of bonehead decisions. So, I know, Mark Daigneault, he's won Coach of the Year, so it's not comparatively to a lot of the coaches in the NBA, he has an idea for what he's doing. You don't win 68 games by fluke. But at the same time, I do think that Rick Carlisle should have had that edge here. And I really don't know if he outcoached him because, there were a lot of games where I feel like they kind of blew it. So it is what it is. But, the Thunder come out on top, and the Pacers are, still going to be in the mix. It's going to stink, though, because you don't know how good Halliburton's going to be when he comes back. And if he has that gap year where he comes back and he's not the same, we're really looking at not next year or the year after, but maybe 3 years from now is the next time that they'll have a real chance. The whole team might be different by then. So that's why you can't let opportunities slip. But, speaking of opportunities, I want to take this one to acknowledge the people who have been on this season for Bullony Basketball. I had a lot of awesome guests. I usually do this at the end of the season. So I just kind of want to shout out my guests. So, starting with episode 2, my guy Clutch Talk, or Lakers Corner. Episode 3, my guy NBA Addict TV. Episode 4, my dude Willie G. And we had episode 5, my guy Romp 2.0. Episode 6, we had Sam Darnold's Forehead. Episode 7, Trill Buckets. Episode 8, Suns Geek. Episode 9, Jacob Blocks. Episode 10, my guy Xander. Episode 11, Jelson. Episode 12, Reliable Rants. And then episode 13, remember that was a big one. I had my guy Garav, NBA Real Talk, Noah Talks Basketball, and then Streaky Heat, who's known now as Villainy. Episode 14, we had Lakers University. Episode 15, the Running the Paint podcast featuring Miles, Nick, and Jackson. We had episode 16, my guy Price. Episode 17, 3 Point Weekly, featuring Devin, Reek, and Gabe. Episode 18, we had my guy Michael. Episode 19, Hoops and MMA. Episode 20, Marisa Sports Historian. Episode 21, my guy Jacob, my IRL friend. Episode 22, Top Notch. Episode 23, my guy Jack. Episode 24, we had Nate the Great. Episode 25, Sports Wikipedia. Episode 26, we had Ian. Episode 27, we didn't have a guest because it was just my prediction stuff. And then 28, 29, and 30, I had guys on that I already had on this season. which was Devin, Reek, and Gabe, but under their names of Run the NBA, Reek Knows Hoops, and Gabe slid in. So in total, this season we have 35 appearances by guests, that being 32 different guests. Both of those are the most ever in a season. So, I got to give props to all these guys who came on this season, made the show possible, made the show fun, made the show a little less boring because, sometimes I'm entertaining, sometimes I might go on tangents, but, I'm not always, super interesting by myself. But anyways, I think it was another great season. I know that, at the beginning of the season, I know we were kind of honoring my guy D-Rose, the first season really in the NBA where he's not playing, ever since he was drafted, of course, or not really on a roster. I guess I shouldn't say not playing because he had a season where he was out for the whole year, but not on a roster. So did feel a little bit weird. I think at times I kind of did feel that, as a fan. I was like, man, I wonder, I almost feel like he should still be, playing, competing for a ring, something like that. The thing is, though, he was, never really a ring chaser. And I'm glad, 1 year removed almost. I know it's, a couple months away, but I think that the, reception that he's gotten, since retiring has been really good. Already getting the know that he's going to have his jersey retired by the Bulls, which is something I thought they'd probably hold off on for a while, just knowing them. So that's a huge plus. And then just makes it seem like he's on a path to get to the Hall of Fame. I think that's a big thing because I think when he was playing, especially in the dog days really of his injuries, people were acting like he would never get in. And I think he deserves to get in, and I'm hoping he does. But yeah, so it was definitely a weird season. You have to let me know what you thought of this season. Maybe we'll rate it 1 to 10. But I think that's pretty much going to cover it. I think I covered everything I wanted to. All the mini games we played this season and stuff. But yeah, Thunder Pacers finals. Don't think people probably had that on their agenda. Maybe the Thunder. The Pacers, though, technically got further last year. So I could see someone before the season having that, but I think once the playoffs started, it would have felt a little bit more unlikely. But yeah, with that being said, I think that's going to close out the show. Again, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it once again for another awesome Bullony Basketball season. And, stay tuned for more content on the channel. You have to see what we got cooking next, whether it's NBA or IRL or whatever it may be. You'll have to see. Could be something else even. So, but again, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching, and we're out. Peace.